Hey, Nathan here. Welcome back to another video covering Unity2D. Last video we discussed rigid body 2D and how that works with the physics engine and how we can get that to work whenever we fire a bullet. By setting the velocity to whatever we want it to be, the physics engine will take over and actually fire and move the object whatever velocity we set. So that is being controlled by the physics engine. We're just using the rigid body 2D. In this video, we are going to add the enemy and talk about collision. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started and drag this enemy into our hierarchy. And we'll call this enemy. And let's rotate it -90 degrees to point down. Alright, scale is fine, I think. Yeah, it looks good. Alright, so let's move this up a little bit. Alright, and let's move this to the left. Alright, now, let's double click this, let's go to scene here, and let's double click this enemy here. So now it's zoomed in. So, like I said in the last video, the general rule is, if you have an object that moves and needs to participate in collision, you need to add rigid body and box collider. If the object is static and it needs to participate in collision, you just need to add box collider. In this video, we are just going to have this as a static object, so all we need to do for the enemy is just add box collider, or any collider, for example. Box collider. Okay. So now that we added the box collider, we can adjust the box collider. But as you see here, it just, like the name says, it just adds a box. So if the bullet fired here, it's going to recognize that as a collision, which is okay because the only way the bullets are firing is from the bottom up. But if we were dealing with all 360 degrees of bullets, if the bullet was my mouse here and it fired this way, it would be considered a collision even though it missed the enemy. It's part of that box. There are a few other things you could add, so let's remove that. There is a Polygon Collider 2D, and we can adjust that. So we can kind of make this work a little bit better. And you can kind of get stuff going. It's kind of like drawing it in Photoshop. Kind of slice it up. If you're familiar with Photoshop, it's kind of what you do here. So either way is up to you. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw this a little bit just to have an example of what's going to happen. So if you do this, there is really no need to do per pixel collision detection because you're actually drawing it. And I can't, I'm going to have to do that kind of thing. Let me do this actually right there, and then we can adjust that a little bit more. Okay. So we can move that a little bit down a little bit more, move that there, move this up a little there, move that down, move that down like that. Okay, so that's looking good. Alright, so now we can take off edit mode. So that's our actual Polygon Collider. So that's what's actually going to be used for colliding with our object. Actually, let's clean that up a little bit there. Okay. Alright, so now if we zoom back out and actually go to our game view. So let's open up our bullet prefab. So drag bullet back to our hierarchy. Okay. Remember, any objects that move and need to participate in collision, we need to add rigid body 2D and box collider or whatever collider we want to use. So our bullets move. We already got rigid body 2D in here. So we just need to add our collision. So let's double click bullet, and let's add Polygon Collider as well on here. All right, so now let's edit this and get this going a little bit. There we go. It doesn't have to be exact, just enough where it doesn't, look like it's colliding on a transparent pixel. As you see, there's a little bit of transparency on this side, but it doesn't have to be exact. I'm not going to make it exact for this example. Okay, so now I'm going to hit apply. So that applies it to the prefab. Alright, so now let's do this. Let's take the bullet out and let's go back to game view and let's play. So fire there, fire here, there. So as you see there, immediately Unity's physics engine took care of the bullet. So the rigid body 2D is being responsible for the collision and affecting what happens to the bullets. Obviously, we want to destroy the bullet and not have it actually bounce and being reflected back. So what we need to do in this case is to set, let's drag the bullet back to the hierarchy. We want to set these as a trigger. Okay, now we need to add a component to the bullet, so we'll add a bullet, add a component, new script, bullet script. Okay, now we're going to apply that. So we set that as trigger. So what that's going to do, let's also set this to as trigger as well, enemy, and let's add a new component, new script, enemy script, and okay. And let's delete the bullet in the hierarchy. Now, play. Now the bullet is passing through the enemy because it's just set to trigger. Alright, so now that we have our enemy responding to a trigger collider, now we need to actually write some code in our enemy script to perform some logic based on that event. So let's go to the enemy file. Let's let Visual Studio open. Okay. So let's delete everything in the enemy class and let's add a method void. So whenever we receive a trigger event, it calls a method on trigger enter 2D. Collider 2D and whatever collider our object is. Either a box collider or a Polygon Collider or whatever, they're all derived from the Collider 2D class. Okay, so what can our enemy be collided by? A bullet. So var bullet is equal to collider dot game object. So this will let us get our game object of the collider. So we need to get our component for our bullet. Okay. Now, if anything else collides with our enemy, we don't want to do anything. We just want to perform logic if it's a bullet. So if bullet, if it exists, if it's not null, we'll perform some logic. In this case, debug.log. Let's just log a message right now. Hit by a bullet. So we're just logging a message at this time. So we save that, and then let's go back to Unity and play. Okay, so now let's go to the console window, and let's fire a bullet. So that missed too. So that was hit by a bullet. The enemy is very small. There we go. So that was hit by a bullet. So we know it's not being hit by a bullet if it's this far away. If it's close, it gets hit by a bullet. Okay. So now, let's go back to project, and let's go to the bullet script. So the bullet script, let's delete everything here. Let's add a public float damage here. And let's set that to, let's say, 10. Okay. So void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D collider var what can a bullet be collided with? An enemy is equal to collider dot game object dot get component, and this is going to be enemy if enemy debug.log hit by an enemy, for example, just so we know if an enemy is hit by a bullet, bullet is hit by an enemy. Okay, so we save that. So we have damage and we have the on trigger enter 2D. So now we'll go back to Unity here and hit play. Go to the console window. Alright, so hit by a bullet, hit by an enemy. So now we know that both scripts are working. So now let's go back to the enemy. And let's set up a public public attribute here. Public float health is equal to, let's say, 100. Okay, so if our enemy gets hit by a bullet, we want to change our health. So health minus equals bullet dot damage. So our bullet is going to do some damage to our enemy. So it's going to decrease the health. And if health is less than 0, we're going to destroy our game object. Alright, now let's go to the bullet class here. So if our bullet hit an enemy, we want to destroy our bullet. Alright. So let's go ahead and save those and go back to Unity here and hit play. Alright, so, wait, let's stop that for a minute. So 100 and our bullet does 10 damage, so we should be able to hit it 10 times. Alright, so now let's go back to Unity and hit play. Okay, so 1 hit, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, one more time, it will destroy the enemy. Good. Alright, so that's collision. We're using a trigger so we can destroy our objects whenever an event occurs. And we set up, let's just do a general recap here. Okay. So, we added an enemy object. We added the Polygon Collider, and we discussed how the Polygon Collider works. So if we go to enemy, you can actually slice it up and kind of acts like a pen tool in Photoshop, and just we traced around the object. So it's a little bit like per pixel collision, but we're drawing where the actual collision will be. We did the same thing with the bullet, and let's go ahead and go to the game here. Let's just add that in here in our scene. Alright, we did the same thing with our bullet. We used the Polygon Collider 2D, and we drew the shape of the bullet for the collision. Okay, so let's go and delete bullet again here. Our player doesn't have a collision. As you see here, nothing really happens if we fly into our enemy here. Okay, enemy. So we added the Polygon Collider. We discussed how to edit the collider. And we decided to use the trigger, because all we need to care about is if the collision occurred. We did not need to worry about the physics engine taking care of when a collision does occur. We just want to have a trigger event to change our health and to destroy our objects when necessary. Okay. We added a enemy script to the enemy, and we added a bullet script to the bullet. So, let me discuss the reasoning behind that is. Bullet. Some people will like to have the bullet do everything, or maybe the enemy will do handling when the bullet needs to be destroyed as well. I like to take the approach of separation of concerns. There's something the enemy has to know about the bullet, how much damage it will do. But other than that, it doesn't really know much about the bullet. The enemy should not be responsible for destroying the bullet. The bullet should be responsible for destroying the bullet. So that's why we made a bullet class to destroy the bullet whenever it's being collided with something. So that way, let's say we have another object that needs to be destroyed when a bullet hits it. Let's say we have a wall. Whenever a bullet hits the wall, it needs to be destroyed. Well, are we going to have to add the destroy bullet in the wall class as well? No, the bullet should be the only one responsible for destroying itself. The enemy should be the only one that knows that it should destroy itself. When a certain condition is met, the enemy knows when to destroy itself. Yeah, we have to pull something from the bullet to know how much health we need to decrease. But other than that, the enemy doesn't know anything about bullet, other than it collided with a bullet and the damage. Enemy is not responsible for destroying the bullet. So that's the approach I'm taking. That's why I added two classes here instead of dealing in the enemy class, destroying the bullet as well. Alright, so the enemy and the bullet have a class. The bullet has a damage it does to the enemy. Since we're using a collider, whenever it enters the trigger event, it calls the method void on trigger enter 2D. And it passes the collider that it used to it passes what the collider object is. And then we get access to the object that it collided with. In this case, a bullet collides with an enemy. So if the enemy exists, which means if we do have a wall here, this will be null, so this will not occur. So when the bullet collides with the enemy, it destroys itself. Similarly, on the enemy script, it has a health attribute. And we get, whenever an enemy gets collided with a bullet, we get the bullet that it collides with. And if it is a bullet, then this will actually execute and it will decrease its health. And when it's less than 0, it will destroy itself. An enemy can't be around with negative health. So when it reaches 0, it destroys itself. You can say less than or equals as well if you want in your game. Just adjust that, and then that will actually delete the object on 10 hits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's actually gone now, instead of requiring 11 hits. Okay, so that's basically it, what we did for this video. Again, the basic rule is, if an object moves and needs to participate in collision, you need to add rigid body 2D and some kind of collider. In this case, we're using the Polygon Collider. If the object is static, and it needs to participate in collision, just add box collider. The reason for needing rigid body or any collider, I wrote down in my notes box collider, so I'm going to change that just so I don't repeat myself again. Okay, so the reason if an object moves and it needs to participate in collision, you want to add a rigid body and a collider is because it helps with the performance a little bit. If the object is static, it's not moving, so therefore we don't need to have a rigid body in the object. So that's why the enemy does not have a rigid body component here. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. We're getting close to the end of the basics here. One more video left where we'll discuss sprite animation, and then that's it. That video might be a little bit long because sprite animation is a little bit complex in Unity, but we'll just have to deal with that video when the time comes. After that, there will be a few weeks break, and then we will discuss an actual full game, and we'll discuss creating a space shooter, which we almost have a space shooter right now. So stay tuned for that. I think I wrote down in my schedule that it will be 9 parts. That might increase or decrease as we go along in the series. It's not going to be a simple space shooter like you see here. For those that have been around in the past few years, you will know I've had a space shooter game where an enemy would spawn up here and it would fly down here. And you just shoot the enemy, it'll randomly spawn the full width of the game. It might spawn here and then try to fly towards the player here, and it will shoot the player as well. We're not going to do that. We're going to make this an actual fun game where we're going to have levels, we're going to have upgrades and stuff like that. So it's going to be a very complex game. And I think it will be a very good thing to kind of learn about more stuff as we go along. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Next video will be the last of the basics, where we'll cover a sprite sheet. Thanks for watching.